My name is Kevin. My full name is Kevin Thomas Grayson. I'm 79. It's funny how time flies when you're old. I live in a small house on the outskirts of Lindenwood, Pennsylvania. Alone. It's been about 5 years since my wife Mabel passed away. We were together for 51 years. Now I often find myself talking to her chair as if she were still here. The house is quiet, almost too quiet. Only the ticking of the old clock on the wall. There used to be laughter, bustle, and the smell of the apple pie she baked every Sunday. And now, it all looks like a set that was forgotten to be taken down after a play. I have 3 children, Lancelot, Melinda, and Marcus. Each has his own life, his own job, his own problems. Lancelot lives in Boston, he's a lawyer. I used to be so proud of him. Melinda is a high school teacher, but now she doesn't even have time for a 5-minute call. And Marcus works for a tech company, and he's moved somewhere I didn't even realize right away where. His kids, my grandchildren, Leah and Malcolm, don't even seem to remember what I look like. The holidays are the only time we see each other, and not always. Last year they said they were too busy, so I cooked my own turkey for Thanksgiving. It turns out that cooking for one person is like singing a duet with myself. It's sad and pointless. Sometimes it feels like I've become invisible. One time I was sitting on a park bench, listening to the wind in the trees, when a young man in his 20s spat next to me without even looking at me. I didn't say anything. And what was I supposed to say? People used to look back at me when I said something. Now I'm just an old man in a hat who goes unnoticed. My day consists of little things. Drinking tea, solving a crossword puzzle, looking out the window at the empty street. I go to the pharmacy. There someone else greets me, albeit dryly, out of duty. And in the hospital, oh, everything is different there. There I'm just patient 117B. Another one on the list. Another aging body that needs care, medicine, and patience that no one else has. I see how the world is changing. Young people are running somewhere, buying something, plugging into their phones. And I seem to have remained somewhere there in the past. Has the world moved forward, or have I simply stopped? Sometimes I think, maybe it's my own fault that I've faded into the shadows. But don't I deserve respect simply for what I was? For what I lived, loved, worked, raised, sacrificed? My health is no longer the same. My back hurts, my joints creak, my heart aches. But the silence hurts the most. The silence in which Mabel is not. In which you can't hear the call from Lancelot. The voice of Leia, who once hugged me and whispered, "Grandpa, you are my hero," is not heard. I have become a shadow of that hero. Sometimes I ask myself, why am I still alive? But then I remind myself that life is not only about what we get, but also about what we leave behind. I just haven't decided yet what exactly I will leave behind. I often go back in my memory to a place where it still smells of gasoline and hard work. In my old auto repair shop, which I opened in 1971 after returning from the Army. I was 25 then, still young but already with deep eyes that saw Vietnam. Pain, death, comrades. I came back alive. Not everyone had that privilege. And I promised myself, if God gave me a second chance, I would take full advantage of it. I worked 24/7, taking apart engines, assembling cars, fixing people's not only equipment but also their moods. I was the one to whom people came with problems, and not only with cars. They trusted me, they respected me. They called me not just Kevin, but Mr. Grayson. That meant something. And when you have a name, you have weight. I met Mabel in the library. She worked there, and I would come accidentally every Tuesday, even though I never liked to read. She would laugh when she saw me with books I hadn't even opened. She brought light, peace, femininity into my life. Her eyes were my home. We got married in the summer of 1969. We exchanged vows under an oak tree that still grows in my yard. She gave birth to Lancelot, then Melinda, and 4 years later, Marcus. Those were hard years, but blessed ones. Everything I did was for them. I worked late, even on Sundays. I took on extra orders so that Lancelot could have a new violin because the old one broke. Or so that Melinda could go to summer camp. I didn't feel sorry for myself. My body ached, but my heart sang. Mabel sacrificed everything too. She knitted blankets, baked pies to sell, sat by the children at night with a thermometer. She was a heroine even though she never admitted it. She would say, "Kevin, we're not rich, but we have love, and that's more valuable than money." On weekends, the kids and I would play baseball in the field behind the school. I remember Lancelot hitting his first home run, and how proudly he looked at me, as if to say, "This is for you, Dad." I remember Melinda putting on a puppet show for her sick mother, and how she sobbed when Mabel laughed through her cough. Marcus was the smallest one, and I carried him on my shoulders when we all went fishing in the river. I had guys in my shop who I helped to become something. I taught Larry, my friend's son, how to change brake pads, and now he has his own service network. I was respected in the community, elected to the local council. I spoke at church meetings, organized charity fairs, and once even raised money for a new school bus. And how proud I was when I became a grandfather. Leah is gentle, like her grandmother. She would come to me with a book and ask to read stories. Malcolm is restless, curious, climbing everywhere. I built a tree house for them, decorated it with garlands for Christmas. They hugged me, shouted, "Grandpa Kevin." I felt that I was still needed, still alive. But what warmed me the most was the look in Mabel's eyes when we all gathered at the table. Her eyes shone as if saying, "We did it, Kevin. We did it together." Now I often look through the albums. Page after page is my life. Not perfect, but real. In every wrinkle on my face is a moment. Victory, tear, celebration, sacrifice, love. I was someone. I was a man they listened to, a father they turned to, a person they counted on. And now, it seems I only remain in those albums, like a photograph yellowed but sincere. Lately, I've been finding myself thinking more and more that I've become superfluous, as if furniture that was once necessary is now getting in the way. It didn't start suddenly, but slowly, imperceptibly, like rust on metal. At first, they called less often. Then they started cutting conversations short. And then they just didn't answer. "Sorry, Dad. I was busy. I'll call you back later." And this later drags on for weeks. Lancelot, my oldest son, has always been serious. His respect for me was pride. But something about him has changed. The last time he came, he sat in my kitchen and said with a cold voice, "Dad, you should think about a nursing home. You'll be better off there. Professional care, new acquaintances." I was silent. How could I explain to him that my home is not just walls? It's a memory. It's the bed where Mabel and I fell asleep. These are photo frames that I used to attach myself. Melinda, my soul, my tenderness, now looks at me with weariness. She was at my place last spring. She saw that I didn't have any groceries, and instead of asking, she reproached me. "Dad, why didn't you order delivery? Everything is through apps these days." I tried to explain that I didn't understand those apps, that I had an old phone. But she wasn't listening anymore. She left the money on the table and left, as if she had bought herself out. And the most painful thing, the grandchildren. Leah, once so sensitive, now sits with her iPhone even when I'm trying to tell her something important. "Yes, Grandpa, I heard," she says, not taking her eyes off the screen. And Malcolm, for whom I once made a boat with my own hands, recently asked, "Does Grandpa still work? Or does he just sit at home?" As if I were an empty space, just a memory that time erases from their minds. Last month, I went to the pharmacy to get some medicine. There were young guys in line in front of me, joking and laughing. One of them turned around, looked at me and said, "Old man, maybe you'll skip it? We're in a hurry?" I looked at him and remembered how in my 20s I would get up when an elderly man entered the room. And now, I was a brake on their pace. Another situation that deeply impressed me happened in the hospital. I came for an examination. I sat in the corridor for an hour. When they finally called, the young doctor looked at the papers and said, "Yes, standard situation. Another patient with a chronic condition. Age takes its toll." And that was it. Not a single look in the eye, not a word about how I felt. Just a statistic. To her, I was not Kevin Grayson, former veteran, father of 3, grandfather. I was another one, and it broke something in me. I tried to talk to Marcus, the youngest. He was always closer to me. I told him that I felt lonely, that I was having a hard time. He listened, nodded. But then he replied, "Dad, we all have difficulties. I have loans, a job, children. I can't be your psychologist." Psychologist? I didn't ask for therapy. I asked for human warmth. I asked my son to just be there. Sometimes. A week ago, I couldn't get out of bed. My back broke me. I called Lancelot 3 times, no answer. Then I called Melinda. She said she was busy at work and advised me to call the medical service. I dialed 911. They arrived half an hour later. They said it wasn't critical and they just injected painkillers. One of the paramedics, a very young one, asked, "Is someone taking care of you? Do you have children?" I lied. "Yes, of course. They're just far away." I lied because I was ashamed. I'm ashamed to admit that I'm alone, that those for whom I gave myself no longer see value in me. My neighbor Laura sometimes brings me soup. She's kind, but she's a stranger, and what I miss is not food, but the voice of a loved one. Hugs, smiles. I don't know if it's old age, or if it's indifference, but I know, when you give everything, and then all that's left is silence, it cuts harder than a knife. It happened unexpectedly, like all things that really matter. It was a Sunday morning sun, as gentle as Mabel's hand used to be. I left the house, not for the letters, because the postman had long ago dropped them in the mailbox without ringing the bell, but simply to walk. My cane, my faithful companion, tapped the sidewalk. Slowly, carefully, I reached the nearest supermarket. I wanted to buy some bread, some milk, and a couple of apples. As I stood in line at the checkout, holding a basket with 2 things, I felt my legs start to shake. Everything around me seemed to float. It went dark before my eyes. I only managed to whisper, "Excuse me," and fell. When I opened my eyes, I saw a face. A man my age, maybe a little younger. He leaned over me, holding my head. His eyes were scared, but kind. People gathered around. Someone called an ambulance. But he was the only one holding my hand. "Kevin?" he asked. "You're Kevin Grayson, right? From the shop in Riverside?" I nodded, though I couldn't say a word. My knees were weak not just from weakness but from shock. "I'm Mark Peterson. My father used to bring his car to you, an old Chevy. And when I was little, I used to run after you while you were turning the nuts. You let me hold the flashlight. Remember?" I didn't remember, to be honest. But I nodded. Maybe because I wanted to remember. I wanted to be who he thought I was again, the one he needed. "You told me then, Mark, anything done with a heart is not just a job. It's an art." And I remembered that. Now I work as a mechanic. My own station. It's all thanks to you, Kevin. Mark walked me to the ambulance. Then he found me at the hospital. He brought me coffee. I sat next to him as the nurses gave him injections. He talked about his life, his wife, his children. But what struck me most was his gaze. There was something in him that I so missed from my own children. Gratitude, respect, memory. "When I was a teenager," he said, "I wanted to kill myself. My father was a drunkard. But I remembered your words. You were the one who showed me that elders are not just shadows but roots." I didn't forget. I cried. I didn't hold back. It wasn't from pain, but from the fact that they remembered me. Someone remembered me, the old man with the cane. Someone still held me in their heart. After I was discharged, Mark came to pick me up, brought me home, and said, "If you need anything, here's my number. I owe you, and I want you to know your life mattered." It does. I sat in my rocking chair that evening and thought, not about how much I had left, but about how much I had already given. And how much more I could give even now. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. Not because I had been visited, but because someone remembered my spirit, not just my name. This chance meeting. No, not a chance one. Maybe Mabel was asking God to make me remember who I was again. To make me feel important again. The morning after I met Mark, I woke up not with the usual backache, but with an inner restlessness. But this time it was not dark and oppressive. It was like the morning wind that pushes back heavy curtains, a signal that it was time to act. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. In front of me was a photo of Mabel. She looked at me as if she knew that my moment had come. And I whispered to her, "I will do it, Mabel. For myself. For you." I pulled out an old box from the pantry where I kept dozens of notebooks. There were notes from the workshop, old ideas, excerpts from my diary. Once I thought about writing a book, but always put it off. And now, why not? My voice is still with me, and if I am not heard now, I will make myself heard through the pages. I called Mark. "I need your help. I want to learn how to use a computer. You said you had an old laptop, right?" He arrived an hour later. He brought not only a laptop, but also a notebook, a pen, and a smile. "Let's sit down together, Kevin. You'll type your memories, and I'll teach you how to format them." We started with something simple, how to turn on the laptop. I'd mix up the buttons, forget how to save a file, and get angry. But every time I wanted to quit, I remembered Mark's words. "You taught me to believe in myself. Now it's your turn." My first text was about the very day I opened my auto repair shop. Then a chapter about Mabel. Then a chapter about the early years of fatherhood. It was hard to write, sometimes through tears, but I felt like I was coming alive. Each page was like a breath of fresh air after a long winter. I created a blog with Mark's help, of course. I called it simply Old Kevin's Voice, and I started publishing fragments. I didn't wait for a reaction. But within a few days, several people wrote to me. One man from Virginia wrote, "Your story is like talking to my late father. Thank you for sharing." Another woman from Minnesota wrote, "My son doesn't listen to me, but I read your post to him, and he apologized. I wasn't just writing. I was coming back to life." Then I decided to do another thing I called All My Children. But not to complain, not to arouse pity. I simply said, "I've started writing memoirs. If you want to know who I am, come." But not because I'm old, but because I'm alive. At first there was silence, and then Melinda arrived. She brought a pie. We sat in the kitchen and laughed like we used to. She read my texts, and in her eyes appeared again that childish tenderness that I thought I had lost. Marcus called and said, "I want Leah and Malcolm to know you for who you were." He asked permission to print the chapters for school. Leah even recorded a video for me. "Grandpa, I'm proud of you. I didn't know you were so cool." And Lancelot, he came unexpectedly. He came in, as always, unannounced, but this time with respect. He hugged me and said, "I was a fool, Dad. I'm sorry. I was just afraid of getting old. And you taught me not to be afraid." And you know what I felt? That I was there again. Not as a problem, but as a human. I even started going to the local library, the same one where Mabel used to work. There's a club for older writers there. We read each other's texts, we support each other. I met Lauren, a widow who also writes. She says I gave her hope, and I just sit there and listen to her. Life is mine again. I don't have the strength I used to have, but I have a voice, and a memory, and a belief that not everything has been said yet. I'm sitting in the same rocking chair from which I looked out the window with despair a few months ago. Now I look out at the same world with warmth. It's autumn outside. The leaves are falling slowly, with dignity, as if they know that a worthy summer has been lived. And I feel the same way too, as if my life was not in vain. As if even now, when my hair is gray and my hands are shaking, I still matter. I've been thinking a lot about aging, about how it changes you not only physically but emotionally. People often say, old age is weakness, but I see it differently. Old age is experience. It's layer upon layer of pain and joy. It's a map of everything we've been through. It's wisdom that comes when you no longer have to prove your strength, but you have to learn to speak and to be heard. What scares me most is not death. What scares me is oblivion. Not physically, but when you are still alive, but already irrelevant. When your stories are of no interest to anyone, your memories are superfluous, your hands are weak. But that's not true. No grandfather, no grandmother is superfluous. We are the silent chronicles of entire generations. We are the roots without which no new tree will grow. I'm not saying this just for myself. I'm saying this to you, young people. Come to your senses. Look at your parents, your grandparents, not just when they need something, but simply for the sake of a conversation, for the sake of a look, a hug, the words, "I remember you," because for us, the elders, it means more than you can imagine. I have lived a difficult life, from war to raising children, from sleepless nights in the workshop to silent days in solitude. But I have no regrets, because I loved, and I was loved. And even if memory eventually erases the face, the warmth remains. When I look at the young, I don't get angry. I'm afraid for you. You chase speed, for status, forgetting that the meaning is not in what you have, but in what you leave behind. And what we leave behind is not things. It's an attitude. It's kindness. These are the words you will say to your children, just as I once said to mine. I'm not writing this memoir for fame, but so that someone, somewhere, someday, will open my story and remember. That was Kevin Grayson. He was. And maybe hug their father, call their grandmother, or just stop by an old person in line and ask, "How are you today?" My children have turned to me. My grandchildren read my texts. But even if that didn't happen, I would still write, because every story is worth hearing. I leave this thought as my testament. Don't wait until it's too late. Love, listen, touch with your heart. Because memory lives not in words, but in how we touched someone else's life. And if you are reading these lines, find someone who is waiting for your call. Sit next to them. Just be. Because sometimes that's enough to save a life.
Subscribe and like, and share this video with your friends.